Okay, so I have to be completely honest with you right out the gate here.
Oh boy.
Yeah, when I first pulled up the file for today's deep dive, I felt this genuine little spike of panic.
It's a heavy one.
That is an understatement. I looked at the title and my brain just it did a stutter step. Let me actually read this to you.
Go for it.
It is called Epistemic Awareness of Doxastic Distinctions, Delineating Types of Beliefs in Belief Formation.
Yeah, that is quite the academic mouthful, isn't it? It sounds like something you'd find chained to a desk in a restricted library section somewhere.
A mouthful. I mean, it's a whole meal, a very dense, chewy meal. So before we do anything else, I need you to translate this for us. What on earth are we talking about today? Are we doing philosophy or reading a schematic for a warp drive?
It definitely sounds intimidating, I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But it's actually incredibly grounding once you get past the jargon. The word doxastic just comes from the Greek word doxa.
Which means belief.
Right, meaning belief. So this paper by Tennyson Samraj, it was published in the Athens Journal of Philosophy, is essentially an architecture of belief.
An architecture of belief.
Exactly. It's a guide to understanding how we know what we know, and more importantly, why we believe things that we can't actually prove in a lab.
Okay, that sounds much more manageable. So we're really just talking about the machinery under the hood of our own brains.
We are. And it tackles a problem that you, me, everyone faces, whether we consciously realize it or not. I mean, we live in a world that is absolutely obsessed with evidence.
Oh, totally. Pixar, it didn't happen.
Precisely. If you can't measure it, weigh it, or put it in a spreadsheet, people tend to say it's not real.
If it's not data, it's just noise.
Right. But here is the central tension the source brings up. Some of the absolute most important beliefs we hold our belief in freedom, in morality, in the self, or even the divine, they literally cannot be proven by science.
But the paper argues they're still rational.
Yes. Samraj argues that holding those beliefs is still completely rational.
See, that is a bold claim. Because I feel like there are a lot of people who would argue that if you can't prove it, it's just wishful thinking. Like, show me the math or it doesn't count.
And that is exactly why this deep dive is going to be so interesting. We're going to break down the three main categories of belief discussed in the paper. We've got the empirical, which is your science stuff.
Right.
We've got the extra-empirical, which covers things like math and metaphysics. And then we have this really fascinating distinction between things we have to believe versus things we choose to believe.
I love that. It's like we're organizing the mental clutter. So let's start with the hard stuff, the science. The paper talks about the empirical trap.
Right. So empirical just means based on observation or experience. And there's this great little anecdote in the text about positivists.
Remind me, a positivist is...
Correctly speaking, someone who believes that the only authentic knowledge is scientific knowledge.
Got it. The hardcore empiricists. The show me the peer-reviewed study crowd.
Very hardcore.
Yeah.
So the analogy goes like this. Imagine a flock of sheep in a field. A normal person driving by sees a black sheep and says, "Oh, look, there's a black sheep."
Which seems perfectly reasonable, I would say that.
Sure.
Yeah.
But the strict positivist would stop you. They'd say, no, that is an assumption. All I can say is that the visible part of that sheep from this specific angle appears to be black.
Wow. Okay, that is skepticism taken to a whole new level.
It really is.
It's like they're afraid to commit to the reality of the whole sheep just because they haven't walked around to the other side yet.
It's funny, but it highlights a real limitation. I mean, if you only believe exactly what your senses report in that exact millisecond, you miss the bigger picture. But in the world of science, that level of rigor is actually necessary.
Sure.
And this leads to two really crucial concepts that the paper unpacks: verifiable versus falsifiable.
Okay, let's unpack those, because I always thought those were basically synonyms. Like, if I can verify something, surely I can falsify it.
Not quite. And the distinction is huge for how we understand evidence. Let's look at the source's example. There is a unicorn.
I'm listening, and I'm really hoping this ends with us finding a unicorn.
Well, that statement is verifiable. If you walk into a forest and you see a unicorn, you have verified it. It's true, you've got the photo.
Okay, so I can prove it's true if I find one.
Exactly. But here is the catch. It is not falsifiable.
Wait, why not?
Because you can never definitively prove there aren't unicorns somewhere.
Oh.
Right? You can't search every single inch of the universe simultaneously. Maybe they're on Mars. Maybe they're hiding behind a really big rock. Maybe they're invisible to the naked eye. You can never say unicorns do not exist based on observation alone.
I see where this is going. So verifiable means I can prove it's right, but falsifiable, it means I can definitively prove it's wrong.
Bingo. And for science, falsifiability is the absolute gold standard. The paper references Karl Popper here, the famous philosopher of science. He used the classic example, all crows are black.
Which seems like a pretty safe bet. I've certainly never seen a neon pink crow.
It does seem safe,
Yeah.
but it's scientifically powerful specifically because it is falsifiable.
Because of the albino crow.
Exactly. It only takes one non-black crow to completely destroy the theory. Because we know what would prove it wrong, we can test it. If a belief can't be proven wrong, it's not science.
So if I say, ghosts are real, but they're completely invisible and they disappear whenever you try to test for them, that's not scientific because I've made it impossible to prove me wrong.
Exactly. You've rigged the game so you can't lose. It might be verifiable if you suddenly bump into a ghost, but it's not falsifiable. And this is where what comes in for the paper.
Right.
If we decide as a society that only falsifiable scientific beliefs are valid, we're in big trouble.
Why? I mean, shouldn't we want all of our beliefs to be that rigorous?
Because as Samraj points out, huge chunks of our reality, specifically what he calls non-reductive beliefs, they just can't be tested in a lab.
Yeah.
If we stick strictly to the scientific ruler, we lose art, we lose morality, math, and the self.
Okay, that is a perfect segue. Let's move to section 2, the extra empirical, because the paper lists some real heavy hitters in this category. The self, freedom, morals, and the divine.
Right, so extra empirical essentially just means outside of the physical senses. And the paper argues these concepts are non-reductive.
Meaning you can't boil them down to atoms and molecules?
Exactly. You can't reduce them to physics. Take the self, for example. The source has this really fascinating point about brain scans.
Yes, this stuck with me too. The text says an MRI can tell if a brain is dead or alive. It can perfectly see the hardware.
But it cannot detect the conscious self. You can scan a brain all day long. You can look at the neurons firing. You can map the electrical signals.
Yeah.
But you will never see the I that is doing the thinking.
You can't find the personality on the screen.
Right. You can't find the memories or the unique perspective. The self is empirically undetectable.
That is just wild to think about. I mean, I know I exist. I'm sitting right here talking to you. I have a favorite color. I have memories of 3rd grade. But scientifically speaking, I am completely invisible.
And yet, denying your own existence would be insane. So we have a belief, I exist, that is totally rational but scientifically unprovable. It requires extra empirical justification.
And it's not just squishy human stuff either, right? Because the paper goes into a really deep dive on math, which I honestly didn't expect.
Really?
Yeah, I usually think of math as the language of science, so I assumed it would be empirical.
You would think so. But math is actually the ultimate extra empirical reality. Think about the Fibonacci sequence or the golden ratio.
The spiral pattern you see in seashells and sunflowers and all that?
Yes. Now, did humans invent that pattern or did we discover it?
Well, I mean, I'd say we discovered it. It was obviously there before us.
Right. The paper argues that mathematical truths are mind-independent. They are true whether we humans think about them or not, and they're timeless. 2 + 2 = 4 before the Big Bang, and it will still equal 4 after the universe ends.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting, because the source makes a bit of a provocative leap right here.
It does. It presents an argument that actually goes back to Augustine and a few others. The idea is, if mathematical truths are eternal and they exist outside of physical space, where do they live?
Well, not in my brain, clearly, because I forget them all the time.
Right, they can't just float in the void. Concepts require a mind to hold them. So the source argues that if there are eternal truths, there must be an eternal mind in which they reside.
So math proves God. Is that basically the argument?
Essentially, yes. It argues for an infinite mind based on the sheer necessity of eternal truths. It's not looking for God in a test tube. It's looking for God in the logic of reality itself. Samraj calls it an existential assertion.
That is a heavy concept. It's sort of like you can't find the architect by just staring at the bricks, but the fact that there's a blueprint implies the architect has to exist.
That's a great analogy. And the exact same logic applies to morality. The paper quotes this idea that it is better to be just than unjust.
Which I think we all generally agree on. Hopefully.
Right, but can you put justice in a test tube? Can you physically weigh goodness?
No. I mean, you can see the result of justice, or the lack of it when things go wrong, but you can't isolate the concept itself.
But we live by it every day. It's an existential assertion. If you try to verify justice empirically, you'll fail. But that doesn't make justice fake. It just means it belongs to an entirely different category of belief.
Okay, so we have these empirical beliefs, the wall, the sheep, the atoms, And we have extra empirical beliefs, math, the self, justice, God. Which leads us to the third big section of the paper, and this is all about choice.
Yes, the distinction between mandatory and volitional beliefs.
Mandatory belief sounds a bit like something a cult would enforce, but I think the paper means something slightly different.
Very different. A mandatory belief is simply something your senses force you to accept.
Okay.
So if you walk headfirst into a brick wall, you have to believe the wall is there. You don't get to step back and say, I choose to believe this wall is an illusion without getting a massive headache.
Right. My senses dictate the belief. The universe forces my hand. It's non-volitional.
Exactly. But then we have volitional beliefs. These are beliefs where your will, your volition, is actively involved. The source references Kierkegaard here. Belief in God, belief in human freedom, or the ultimate meaning of life, these are volitional.
Because the evidence doesn't physically force you to accept them.
Precisely. The evidence is inherently ambiguous. It's not like the brick wall. You can look at the exact same universe and see random, meaningless chaos, or you can look at it and see beautiful design. The sensory data is exactly the same for both people. The belief requires a decision.
And the paper introduces a term for this that I actually hadn't heard before. Because usually in philosophy we talk about justified true belief, which is Plato, right?
All right. Plato's classic standard for knowledge is justified true belief. But Samraj coins a new term here. Justified belief decisions.
Justified belief decision, I like that. It admits right up front that I am making a call.
It's intellectually honest. It acknowledges that for metaphysical claims, we aren't just passively recording facts like a camera. We are deciding on a worldview. We decide for or against them.
And the paper uses the Adam and Eve story as an example of this, doesn't it?
It does. It points out that even if Adam stood there and visually saw God, seeing the physical manifestation isn't the same as knowing God's essence. He still had to actively choose to believe in God's goodness or disobey. The point is, empirical proof doesn't eliminate the need for a choice.
So why does this matter to you, listening to this right now? Because I feel like we get into a lot of arguments with people where we're basically demanding proof for things that maybe just don't work that way.
And that's the crux of the whole paper. It matters because we constantly beat ourselves up or we beat others up for not having scientific proof for things that aren't designed to be proven that way.
Right.
We shouldn't demand empirical proof for volitional beliefs.
Hmm.
If you ask someone to mathematically prove their love for their child, you're using the wrong tool. You're trying to measure temperature with a ruler.
Trying to measure temperature with a ruler, that is the bumper sticker for this deep dive. I love that.
It really is. It's a massive category error.
Okay, before we completely wrap up, we have to do the philosophical lightning round. The paper throws a bunch of technical terms at us near the end that sound super fancy, but they're actually really cool distinctions once you get them. I'm going to throw them at you. You just break them down. Ready?
I was born ready. Let's do it.
First up, analytic versus synthetic.
Okay. Analytic means it's true by definition alone. The classic example is triangles have 3 sides.
Yeah.
You don't need to go out into the world with a protractor and measure a bunch of triangles to know that. It's already contained in the word triangle.
Got it. So if I understand the word, I immediately understand the truth of it. And synthetic.
Synthetic requires actual experience.
Mm-hmm.
So, sugar is sweet. The word sugar doesn't inherently mean sweet until you actually put it on your tongue. You have to synthesize the concept with the physical experience.
Okay, next one. And this one has a fun twist in the paper. A priori versus a posteriori.
Ugh. Classic epistemology. A priori basically means known before experience. So logic or math.
Yeah.
You can work it out in your head. A posteriori means known after experience, like
Yeah.
knowing that it's currently raining outside.
But the twist involves water, right?
Yes. This is a brilliant nod to the philosopher Saul Kripke.
Yeah.
We used to think that necessary truths, meaning things that are absolutely true in all possible worlds,
Yeah.
had to be a priori, like logic.
Sure.
But Kripke argued that water is H2O is actually a necessary truth.
Wait, why?
Because if you traveled to another planet and found a liquid that looked like water, felt like water, but chemically it was XYZ, it wouldn't be water, it would just be something else. So water is H2O in absolutely every possible world.
Okay.
And here's the kicker. We discovered that fact empirically. We had to go to a lab, look through a microscope, and find out that water was H2O. So it's a necessary truth, but it's a posteriori.
That honestly breaks my brain a little bit. We found an eternal necessary truth by looking through a microscope.
Exactly. It shows that science can actually discover things that are philosophically rigid. It bridges the gap between the two worlds.
Okay, last one. And this is my favorite because it involves superheroes. Didicto versus de re.
Yes, the Superman example. This is all about the ambiguity of belief.
That's the scene for us.
Okay, so dicto is a belief about a proposition, about what is said. So Lois Lane believes Superman can fly. That is a true statement.
Right. She's seen him do it a million times.
But Doree is a belief about the thing itself, the actual physical entity. Now, Lois Lane looks at Clark Kent standing in front of her. She does not believe Clark Kent can fly.
Definitely not. He's clumsy. He's always dropping his pen.
Exactly. But Superman is Clark Kent. They are the exact same physical entity. So does she believe he, the person standing there, can fly or not?
Whoa.
See, if you talk to Dicto about the name or the statement, she believes Superman flies, but Clark doesn't. If you talk Doree about the actual physical object of flesh and bone, she holds entirely contradictory beliefs about the exact same guy.
That is hilarious. So belief depends entirely on how you frame the object you're believing in.
Exactly. It shows us that belief isn't just this simple, direct line to reality. It's constantly filtered through our language and our limited understanding.
So bringing this all together, what does this all mean? We've covered sheep, unicorns, brain scans, and Superman.
We've covered some ground. Basically, we have empirical beliefs. That's the mandatory stuff, the verifiable stuff. And we have extra-empirical beliefs, the volitional, decision-based stuff like faith, morals, and the self.
And the big takeaway from Samraj's paper is that both of these categories are justified, right? Just in totally different ways.
Correct. That is the crucial point to remember. We need to respect the means used to arrive at a belief. You cannot critique a metaphysical belief using a scientific ruler, just like you shouldn't try to use metaphysics to fix your plumbing.
Right. Don't pray for the pipe leak to magically fix itself. Just call a plumber. But maybe pray for the patients to deal with the plumber's bill.
Something like that, yeah. It's ultimately about epistemic humility, knowing which tool to use for which kind of truth.
I really love that phrase. Epistemic humility. It sounds like a virtue we could all use a lot more of right now.
Absolutely. And I think the source leaves us with a really profound, lingering question regarding those justified belief decisions.
Go on, let's hear it.
Well, if some of our most deeply held beliefs, the idea that we are free, that we are conscious, that our lives actually have meaning, if those are choices rather than just verifiable facts, it forces us to ask a tough question. Are we defined more by what we know or by what we choose to believe?
Wow. That is definitely going to keep me up tonight. Are we just the sum of our data, or are we the sum of our decisions?
I suspect the answer is a volitional one.
I see what you did there. Well, for everyone listening, that is it for today's deep dive. Take a second to check your own assumptions, look at your doxastic map, and maybe give a little more grace to the beliefs that just can't be put in a test tube.
Keep thinking out there.
Catch you next time.